I'm Sean Callanan, and welcome to episode 408 of Sports Geek. This week, I wanted to pull back the curtain on some of our work with the NFL over in the States recently, both at the Pro Bowl games in Orlando and then in New Orleans for Super Bowl LIX, or Super Bowl LIX it was known. Just sort of want to take you through some of the stuff that we did and sort of also how we got here. So for a long time at Sports Geek, we were always an advisor. We were always helping internal teams better understand their fans, how they could create more content. And with this model, it has been still a relatively new model. I mean, we've been in business for 15 years now, but for the past 4 years, we've actually been the agency of record and producing all of the content from a social perspective for the NFL in Australia and now also New Zealand with the NFLAUNZ, or the NZ for my US audience channels. It all started 4 years ago. We were lucky enough to get a call from a good friend of mine and former podcast guest, Andrew Collins, who worked out of Mailman, and they were doing a lot of the work in different international markets and didn't have anyone to cover the bases in the Australian market. And so lucky enough got the call up to say, hey, can you help with the NFL channels in Australia? And so at that point, we were reporting and checking in weekly with the team in LA that was running NFL International. Henry Hodgson was running NFL International at the time. Damani Leach, who's been on the podcast, is also part of that team. And so we were reporting in and sort of starting to give them some insights into what the Australian and New Zealand market look like for the NFL. We were really excited to get our hands on. At that stage, it was a NFL Australia Instagram account and NFL Australia Twitter account. That was it. It was 2 accounts. And to be honest, it was middling audience engagement with the accounts. And so we were really excited with the opportunity. All the data that we could see socially, we knew that NFL was a big thing in Australia, and we really just wanted to keep telling everyone, both here in Australia, but then also at NFL offices, of what the opportunity was like. And the way that we went about doing that was we just really lent into what we do at Sports Geek. And it was a really good opportunity to practice what I preach, which for us, I really lean into the geek side. It's really what's your tech look like and what are the process around it. And so when we first got access to both the accounts, but then also some of the technology infrastructure behind it and some of the things we had access to, I was lucky enough to be using some tools that I'd spoken to people about and they'd already raved about. So one of those being Clip Pro, built by the guys at WSC, to be able to clip and get any highlights. So that was one of the first things. I'm like, what are my restrictions? What can or can't they do? And I do remember Henry and Sonny saying, well, you're the NFL, you can post whatever you like. And so that really opened up the opportunities for the accounts and what we're able to do. And so again, I went into full geek mode and I wanted every single 5-star highlight. I wanted to make sure that was already sitting there in Slack and getting ready to be tweeted out quickly or created on posted on Instagram. And then we started looking at how could we start using those tools, but then also getting out what we like to call this fast content that's easy to consume, that is really built for social. And we really lent into using a product that we use with a lot of Sports Geek clients, which is Canva, an Australian-owned product, and really leveraging and really pushing the limits of what Canva could do, whether it be in the photo editing and design space, but then also early on in that video space. So that was the first port of call for what we did in that first year. It was really important to get that tech foundation to go, look, I know we can do something. But then what we do really well is helping under-resourced teams over-deliver. And I knew this wasn't a job that I could do alone. I know enough NFL to be dangerous, but I would not ever consider myself an expert. So I knew I needed to find someone that had that NFL knowledge, that could learn, if I was to speak like the Mandalorian, the Sports Geek way, in the way that we both tackle storytelling, get news out, leverage the platforms in the way that we want them to be leveraged. And I knew I had the capability to train those staff and those people up. Lucky enough to do it across multiple sports. There's some really talented people out there that I'm lucky that I helped work with to help them get those roles and flourish in those roles. And so a real key point and a big part of success for what we've all done on the NFL Australia and New Zealand channels is Dylan Parks, digital producer that, quite happily say I recruited via the Twitter DMs because he was interacting with us on Twitter Spaces in a point where I'd actually had to change over the initial digital producer that I'd hired and had done a really good job in those first 10 weeks of the account, had decided to take a different change of direction. And so I needed to find someone that, one, loved their NFL, but also had a skill set that could be molded to understand, what this social space could offer. And so brought Dylan on board, and he said, I don't know social. I'm a sports journalism grad. I'm not quite sure what this is. And that's where I knew I had confidence to be able to say, I know how to train people. And I know how to give those people the runway and throw many ideas at people to be able to push them both creatively and what they can do with all the platforms. And so here we are. 4 seasons later, we just finished our second Super Bowl on site. We were there last year in Las Vegas, and obviously learned a lot last year, and gave us some more tools and more opportunities to plan. As much as it is hard to plan for an environment, that's what I sort of want to go through in this podcast. But so one of the things that I think you also need to know, and it's always hard assessing, whether it's an account of a team or a league or a particular region, as we're doing, is what are the goals of that account. And people can get critical of why are they doing that, and it's like, well, if you don't know the why behind it, then it's really hard to understand why they might be doing it. And for us, it's all about growing the fandom of the NFL in Australia and New Zealand. That's it. So that becomes a really wide remit. One, yes, we still need to talk to the NFL fans that have been fans for a long time and have a high level knowledge of the sport. But we've also got to welcome in, like we did in the last 18 months, the Swifties who are new to the game but want to learn more and want to engage, to people who just start coming on board throughout the playoffs or at a Super Bowl. Like all the data says, a lot of new fans come on board through a Super Bowl. So how can we cut through that to get fans on board in some way? And sometimes that's through our content. Sometimes that's through the content of partners, whether they be broadcast or influencers. And so yeah, we've done a lot of work in that space to grow the fandom. I think we have done that. And one of the things we've always joked about internally is that, hey, we just wanted this to be so successful that it'll be undeniable that a game will come to Australia. And so to see that happen, to see the game for Melbourne in 2026 be announced, was very satisfying for all the work that we've done, and especially the NFL Australia New Zealand team have done to make that happen. It was very special. And what I want to do in this podcast, it's not just me. I wanted to bring Dylan on to sort of talk about what was our week like in Orlando and New Orleans, and how we went about planning the things that we could plan, how we adapted, and what we learnt from last year in sort of taking on Super Bowl for the first time in Las Vegas, and how we got some of those wins over Super Bowl week. So hope you enjoy this episode. It's a little bit behind the scenes, and I think people who are working in the social and digital space will really enjoy it, because we're going to get into the nitty gritty. The amount of hours that Dylan and I spend on sweating copy and tone and number of assets in a carousel, and should we send this to someone for collab? Like that is our week, and that we had a lot of those conversations in New Orleans, and thankfully they're all well worth it. So please enjoy my chat with Dylan Parks as we recap Super Bowl LIX. Very happy to welcome my digital producer who runs all things on NFLAUNZ, Dylan Parks. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. It's good to be here. Been at Sports Geek for a while, but first time guest on the pod, so this is great.
Yeah, normally we're meeting on Butter and on Slack and on WhatsApp and keeping everything going, but I really wanted to sort of dive into what was a really, really big couple of weeks for NFLAUNZ, not just as our accounts, but overall. We put in a lot of planning. So this was your second Pro Bowl and second Super Bowl. I'd been to a previous Pro Bowl in 2023 and then snuck my way into opening night when the Eagles and Chiefs ran. We really saw last year, and the pitch was last year, that it's a two-person operation to be able to take full advantage of the opportunities. And for us, the opportunity of the Pro Bowl games is to get access to the star players. We've got a lot of access to a lot of content with the NFL and the domestic team that support us so well, and the LCC that are capturing stuff on the sidelines. But getting some content from players, especially the stars of the game, it really does move the needle for our account, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. And that's the only chance we get, obviously, living in Australia. It's impossible for us to get access to the players. So that week plus in the two cities is so valuable for the NFLAUNZ account.
So for us, and again, Pro Bowl games it was sometimes one, there's sometimes two. There's some opportunities around the Pro Bowl practice. So, and so we pretty much, are scanning the list of who's going to the Pro Bowl and who might be going to the Pro Bowl, who's still going to the Pro Bowl, and trying to plan, I guess, content pieces and the like. And in previous years, I just happened to have a tiny little cricket bat in my bag when I went to Las Vegas, and I got a whole bunch of pro bowlers to sign a mini cricket bat. And it's that intersection of what the hell is that? And Aussie fans going, elite content, love it. Cricket, because it's a thing that Aussies see. Last year, we had some trials and tribulations with the big yellow Sharon, getting them to sign it, with security not allowing us to have the football, and at one point squeezing the air out of the football as Micah Parsons was signing it.
That was an experience.
That was an experience, and we're like dodging. And then this year, we decided to sort of not I'm very much love running something back. But there was this opportunity with George Kittle on stuff that we'd done, previous with him. And this is the podcast with props. So in 2013, I turned up to Pro Bowl wearing this silly looking hat for those watching on YouTube. It's an Australian hat with corks. Because again, we're in at the Pro Bowl games, you're in a media pen. So you've got to do something to attract attention. In 2023, George Kittle, San Francisco 49er tight end, went, I want to go talk to the guy with the cool hat. And funnily enough, I actually had a second hat. And so I said, here you go, mate. You want a hat? Here's the hat. And that was just, again, a visual setup. No intention to give George Kittle a hat. And he took the hat, and as luck would have it, we ended up with photos of him mean mugging in the hat and practicing in the hat in Las Vegas at Pro Bowl games. And so, again, the best laid plans, that initial photo that went out, 2 years ago just went bananas, didn't it?
It went, completely bananas. And it was so perfect how it just happened, and it was just by circumstance. And those are usually the best content pieces that eventuate. And I remember it was a Monday morning in Australia. Sean's over in Las Vegas, and I get the message, oh, you're not going to believe what just happened. George Kittle is wearing the Australian hat. We need to post this right now. And we were so fast on the trigger, and it turned out to be one of the best winners from that week, and the birth of such a cool content series.
Well, and the thing, so the following year, Kittle is a time Pro Bowler, was announced in the Pro Bowl, and we're like, oh, we've got an idea. And then obviously the 49ers make the Super Bowl. And we're like...
That's correct, yeah.
We're leveling up. We've got to come back to him with something else. And so last year at opening night, I donned the hat again and went to opening night, and we'd bought him an Aussie Chiller hat, which is a sort of a leveled up hat, but it's not quite an Akubra, but it's a cool hat that you can, Australian hat, keeps the sun off, all of that kind of thing. You've now been to a couple of opening nights. It's madness. The amount of people that are trying to get to athletes is ridiculous. And so, again, a visual aid, I had the hat on, and we sort of waited it out. There's a 45, 50-minute media availability. There's a real crush at the start. You're fighting with, Jimmy Fallon's talent and NBC. And the US media has never got contact with these players. So we sort of late. And I just said, hey, George, and he goes, oh, I've still got that hat in my wardrobe at home. I'm like, again, the recognition was amazing. And I said, oh, mate, I've got a new... And unfortunately, coming off shoulder surgery, I gave the weakest throw you've ever seen. Didn't even make the podium. But George was an absolute legend.
Video edit.
I saved in the edit, but he's put it on, and he's just, he's done the cheers. Thanks a lot. And again, one of our early, winners of Super Bowl week last year, opening night, was, him saying, thanks a lot, really appreciate it. And so, we'd had this sort of series done, and what no one knew was we'd actually had a set up for a Pro Bowl that we threw away because we wanted to really level up opening night. And so heading to Orlando, we're like, I've still got that T-shirt of George wearing the hat. Can we run it back?
Of course we can.
So sort of, putting it in the bag. And then again, the madness is the Pro Bowl games practice where the media are sort of, there's the local Orlando media trying to get a few grabs, and then there's, more of these social audience type channels that are trying to get small grabs, asking them, what's their favorite ice cream or what's their first job at high school like. So everyone was trying to do their bit. We had the AFC first, and we sort of did a few grabs, and we've got some grabs that are still in the can. Tried a few things, and it's a very hit and miss. It depends on the mood of the player.
It's a very hit and miss atmosphere where you can execute the plan, but have backups, because plan A isn't always going to work. Have a plan B, plan C, and sometimes even D and E, so you can pivot quickly in a fast-moving environment to make it work best.
Well, exactly. I mean, even last year we tried to get players to sign a thong for those who are listening. But as soon as we did it, we realised it was impossible to sign And it was an impossible concept to explain to them really quickly because we wanted what are you talking about? And then when they went to sign it, it didn't work. So we threw those thongs away in 10 minutes last year. So again, you've got to have that, embrace that happy fail and go, well, what's next? But then when we have a concept, like we want to finish off that concept, when the NFC team came out, we're letting, Pro Bowl quarterbacks walk us by. We're letting, superstars walk us by. We're like, we just want George. And George, being a man of the people, decided to sign every kid's autograph on the fan side. So it was really, and you don't want to be, there are people that will just push in and grab the camera and get the piece. That's not our style. We're like we'll be polite. We'll eventually get the bit. And then we start getting the media availability has closed. And we're like, oh no, not the security again. And it was literally at the last minute where, again, I had the hat on. I said, hey, George. And he just looked at me and he goes, where's my hat? And we're like, beautiful. We've got him. And then I've got, nice, mate, I've got something better. And I hand him the T-shirt of him wearing the hat 2 years ago. And he's just like, the way I've been describing George Kittle, he's a human version of Scooby-Doo. Like, he just gives all of these reactions that you want.
He is.
You were sitting on the sideline trying to cap these alternate angles. What was it like from your side point of view?
Yeah, it was a bit of chaos at the start and then just a lot of praying and hoping for it to take place. And when he turned around and saw you, and I was just off to the side getting the old, and his reaction and then your reaction was just priceless to see. And it was, love it when a plan comes to fruition.
Absolutely. And then also just even think like how we executed them previously to now. Like our design was, oh, cool, this is a carousel. This is a shot from last year. Here's a shot. Here's his reaction. Here's the main video and here's the quote grab, which obviously is you've been looking into the stats and it's something that's worked quite well.
100%.
That was obviously we're like, that's how we're going to do it from an IG point of view. What were some of the numbers from that impressed you?
Yeah, that was our early winner for the week, and it really set the tone for what was to come. As soon as we got the grab, we immediately in contact with the domestic team going, we've got the piece. We will send the collab. Just wait, we're going to get it going. Then once we got back to the NFL hotel, putting it together, as you alluded to there, the carousel was the best format for Instagram, and it turned out to be massively successful. 36,000 engagements, reached about 600,000 people, 60,000 impressions. So it was really great how that happened. And then on TikTok, it was a bit of more of a lo-fi edit on TikTok. It was really set up for that comparison piece of the 2 years for Instagram. So on TikTok, it was a bit harder to show that in the storytelling, but we still managed to put together, a 20-second reel that got 320,000 views, about 6K engagements, and that was collabed with the domestic team on TikTok as well. So
and
really
that's the thing.
It's
like
played out.
And again, that carousel storytelling format, it does lend itself to go, oh, okay, what's the TikTok edit of it as well? But it is just, how can you get, TikTok is all about getting a unique piece of content, and that was just us. Like no one else got that. It wasn't the same that everyone got from the same podium. And that's what was our goal. That was our goal going into Pro Bowl games, to go, how can we get that unique content? Now we've got some other stuff that we're sort of, we're still in sifting through mode. Like we don't, because it is a really important content capture day, we don't use everything that we capture from Pro Bowl and Super Bowl Radio Row immediately, because it's still going to work. It's still going to work down the track.
For the listeners out there, the NFL off-season is very long. There's 7 months.
But it's also for us. Yeah, for us, like our fans will love that once they see it. So that was much our Pro Bowl games adventure, and we look forward to seeing George Kittle at the next Pro Bowl when we give him a T-shirt of him holding a team wearing a hat. Like it is like, and he's the kind of guy that will continue to have inception of that. So maybe it might be a photo of him, a T-shirt that gets made into a hat. Maybe we go back to the hat. Maybe that's what we need to do. But one thing we do want to do, and this is shout out to Angie, we want a T-shirt line. We want people to be George Kittle wearing an Australia hat T-shirt, because I will play rock one. But yeah, and George is an absolute legend for it. You just always know you're going to get good value from him.
Yeah, shout out to George if you're listening. You're probably not, but shout out anyway.
Yeah, shout out George on the reel that you're going to share from this. Exactly. So then we made the relatively quick flight to get out of Orlando on Sunday rather than Monday. We didn't want to be caught short Monday night. Monday night is such a big night in the NFL Super Bowl week. They've really made opening night it kicks off all the content for the week. Again, like you said earlier, all of the US media and international media start turning their attention to the Super Bowl. And so for those who've never been, they effectively have 1 hour of media availability for one team and one for another. 6 of the main stars have a podium, but the rest of the players are just wandering around the field, and you can pretty much interview everyone. Now, we've had, like we just sort of discussed, we had some success last year with George Kittle. We had some success with Travis Kelce post last year. 2 years ago, I was lucky enough to just hand Jordan, the podiums were set up differently where I was able to hand my phone to Jordan and he did a piece to camera for our account. Describe what it's like opening night from your point of view and to get into capture and trying to figure out what you can capture.
Yeah, it's hard to describe and hard to really present it to people that don't know what opening night is, but it's just so chaotic. There's thousands of people in small areas and then hundreds around little podiums around the specific players that are the quote unquote stars. So from our point of view, it's just you know exactly who you want and then exactly what questions you're going to ask, and you need to make the most of your 10 seconds because that's what you're going to get. So, and again, so many people that it's mind-blowing.
And the thing is, I think, like last year, it was a little bit more like we had really definitive asks and things that we want to do. We had, George hat bit, and we had the Travis of whether he was going to come to Melbourne for a concert. Like, talk about Taylor without talking about Taylor, and we were able to execute those pieces. I think we both felt that this was a tougher brief. Obviously, Jordan Mailata being there, like all of the Australian media is going to keep hyping his story of potentially being the first Australian to win a Super Bowl, play and win in a Super Bowl. And, we'd already done, even though we are still on this wide remit of teaching all the fans, we'd already done a lot of Jordan's backstory. Asking Jordan about his, being, like we'd done those stories both in previous opening nights and a whole bunch of other content. It was a tougher thing to go, what are our straight shots? Like, my first question, again, because you had to be at the podium, I was in that initial push of waiting. And I asked him what his family back home were going to be doing. And he's like, I'm here. Like, my question fell completely flat. But then I think it was a matter of, checking in with, seeing what other broadcasters were doing, were there things that we could build upon. We've actually got some stuff that we did capture from opening night that we are going to use in the next couple of weeks. And even, like you said before, have those backup plans. Talk about your position of, I'm here at opening night, I may as well shoot my shot. Talk about your podium interaction with Jordan.
So after the plan A and B with Jordan fell flat, I found myself at the podium and there was a little bit less people halfway through. And I was there, as you alluded to, and I had to come up with something on the spot. So for those who don't know, last year at the draft in April, the Philadelphia Eagles had a first-round pick announced live at the Gold Coast, and Jordan presented that draft pick. So my mind went to that.
And you were there.
And I was, capturing it all from behind the scenes and had a growing relationship with Jordan, knowing him, getting to chat with him previously. And he recognized me straight away. And that's where my mind went to straight away. So, and knowing Jordan, his personality he's such a carefree, easygoing guy that is just awesome. So I asked him the question, what's tougher, blocking Chris Jones, who is a Chiefs superstar defensive tackle, or announcing a draft pick live from the Gold Coast, which got a great reaction from him. He laughed. So it worked really well. It was, again, a great showing of having plans that work in any scenario.
But it's also that recognition piece. Like, you didn't have a hat on like me to be able to recognise, but you'd got you'd done with Jordan previously. He recognised you. And I think he was more to people he did recognise. And so you've just got to take those chances, where you can. Because opening night just opens up a whole bunch of, I ran into our good friend Sketch and said, hey, he's asking about the shipmates, and again, doesn't end up on the content piece, but it's like, I still send it to the shipmates and they're like, Sketch is still asking for you. So, get involved. So it's a long night. And then we can always count on our good friend Uncle Sue. All Australians wake up at 4 a.m. in the morning and watch Red Zone with Scott Hansen. Here's a man that always hits a mark. We literally say, hey, Scott, we're here from NFL Australia. And he goes, my Aussies. And he did the spoon in for Super Bowl Monday. So he's an absolute professional, and he was hosting on the night. So we just sort of got him for a second. And so, again, like you said, some of those sort of backup plans. And then the other piece, I think, was also working with all the broadcast partners. We had Channel 7 there, FCN there, Resh, who's one of the hardest working men in Australian media, especially on the NFL side. We also didn't need to double dip. They got some really great grabs with Coach Stoutland and Jordan. And so well, they've done that. We don't need to go and get the same bit of content and do it, because we're also, looking to support everyone. So overall, I think it was a good start to the week. What about yourself?
I completely agree. Yeah, it kicked off the week, a big week, as we'll get to soon, in the perfect way.
Well, and that's the thing. So we had, so this was Monday, and we had a press conference scheduled for the Wednesday about what everyone now knows is the Melbourne 2026 game. And so I think that's when our attention definitely turned to that, to make sure we wanted to make sure we nailed that piece. We had some terrific assets, being sizzle reels that sort of showed the journey of the international game across the globe, and now landing in Melbourne with the Rams as the home team. And some key assets that sort of said, hey, Melbourne 2026 and the Rams are going to be at the MCG. And then it just became, what does the timing look like? Coordinating it in New Orleans. It was, let me get my times right. I think it was 3 o'clock in New Orleans and 8 a.m. in Melbourne, Australia. And then it was for both of us, how do we get the tone right from a copy point of view and sort of get everyone around it? And that's where I think we really rose to the challenge to make, Facebook look like, what's X look like, what's Threads look like, how does IG collab look like, who's involved, dotting all of those I's and crossing all of those T's. And I think there'll be social media managers listening, nodding their heads. I think it's so important. I think we've all seen posts go out and you just go, why did they do that? Or take us, and we've got our system where, we've got Notion where we have all the copy and the copy for the different platforms and making sure all the handles are right. What were your thoughts on both getting that process right and sort of locking it in first?
Oh, it's so critical. And as you just mentioned, we had 5 platforms to tick off. And while we're creating the copy, we also have 2 audiences to take care of. We have the Australian audience and the New Zealand audience, which is our account, and then the US domestic audience, which, with all our posts being collabed, we need to appease those 2 audiences and make it appeal to both of them. So that was the challenge in creating it. And then having it ticked off by diff people adds another layer to it. I was quite, very happy, I should say, with what transpired and our process behind it, which is important. Without that process, it would have been so much more difficult.
And that's what I think. I think the piece for us, and I think there is sometimes social folk that feel helpless or feel out of the loop or feel like the last to the party, potentially. What we did was we were like, well, we'll just own it. We'll just own as much of it as possible. And it's much easier for someone to say, yes, that's all good, than, because we weren't precious to say this is the only way. But if we write it all out and we have every single thing planned and someone can go and go, that looks great. And it's, because we're working with other people that had a lot on their plate. And so it was really great to, shout out to Colin and Bryce at the domestic team, who both looked it over and said, that looks good, guys. We're happy for you to lead. We had the differences of, other international markets are doing game announcements, and, Germany are doing them in German, and, Madrid are doing them in Spanish, and those kind of things. We didn't have that. We're in English. So like you said, you had to write the copy and tweak the copy to make sure it works for the Australian market, but also still makes sense for the US market. And then it just, it was the classic social announcement, like the press conference was happening up the front and Peter O'Reilly's having the talking, and then the sizzle reel comes on, and then look, where's Greta? Greta's going to give us light. And, we're sitting there with Colin, who's just sitting there ready to accept every collab and retweet. And we're like, where's Greta? We're like, that's it, go. And we're like, go. And we're like posting like crazy. So it was a manic, 5 or 6 minutes to go, is it out? Did it work? Did that, why is the Wi-Fi down now? And so you have that sort of mad panic because it's going out to millions of people. And the good thing was, it was, and it was rubber stamping, unfortunately it was leaked a week prior by a news organisation that shall not be named, but it got it wrong. And so it was good to be able to at least rubber stamp it and say, this is the official piece. This is the official team, the Rams. The Rams have been announced. No one has been announced. And then it was a bit of a big deep breath and, hey, it was done. But it was a real historic moment. It was absolutely awesome to be in.
Oh, it was so awesome. The 10-year-old NFL fan in me was just living the dream. And to start in 2021 on the accounts with 15, 20,000 Instagram followers to now having 70,000, having a game announced next year, it's so special to see how that journey has progressed in the last couple of years.
And it is something that we've, joked about internally of we just need as many social followers to fill the MCG. And, if you can, we've done it a couple of times over, but we're actually, we're getting pretty close to a couple of our platforms. And, with TikTok now over 80,000 and Instagram over 70,000, we expect that to grow. And, if you're not following the accounts and you expect to get a ticket, well, if you're not following the accounts, you won't get a ticket. So for starters, you should be following the accounts. But it was a big win. And to hit all the marks again, terrific support from the domestic team and our team, Greta and all that, and much kudos should go Charlotte Offord, who's put in a power of work in the past 3 seasons since she's come aboard as GM of Australia and New Zealand. To liaise with all the governments and have all the conversations with the NFL to make a game happen. Absolutely amazing effort.
Said it better myself.
So then we went from what we learned last year was being on Radio Row and what the opportunities were, and you could just ambush players occasionally. Some you can't. Don't try going up to Debo in Radio Row. He actually had a guy stiff arming media himself. He doesn't do any stiff arms in Radio Row, but you won't get him. So we still had some success in that, but I don't really want to focus on Radio Row. I wanted to focus on NFL Honours, because NFL Honours last year, we got red carpet access. We actually had some success with coming by. We had players trying Tim Tams. We interviewed different players and got some good grabs. Whether it be players talking about being in Australia or shout outs to the Australian market. This year was a little bit tougher on the red carpet than last year, wasn't it?
Completely tougher. It all depends on where you're situated on red carpet. So last year we had a really good location where people would come right past us and we could draw their attention to bring them over. Where this year, the Australian New Zealand market, alongside the German, the Mexican, the Spanish, the Brazilian, we were all towards the back end of the red carpet. So we were right at the end. And the players and the people and the partners would just walk right past us, and it was really tough to draw them in.
It was a red carpet design. It was a straight shot, and eventually, yes, they might have been sick of the red carpet, but they still did go past us, whereas there was sort of a U-turn right next to us, and, players could miss us. So, we've got some great vision or some great shots of Josh Allen chatting with George Kittle, but we didn't get access to Josh Allen. And we had questions ready for Josh Allen to ask him about his mate Danny Rick. And so again, it's one of those ones where it's like, who are we going to ask and who do we want? And to a certain degree, you can't pick and choose. But it was also a case of just getting those reps in. Like last year, I was the one holding the mic, talking to people, and it's something I wanted you to do. And I'm not feeling it. I'm not getting anything. And get in there. You're able to have a good conversation with Cameron Dicker in that instance.
That's right, Dicker the kicker. Australian favourite, making that connection between Australian rules football and the NFL for people that might not be privy. Back in December, he had a 34-year first, I believe, where he kicked a free kick field goal. So that was what we discussed, and stay tuned for the socials, you'll see that. So that was definitely the A+ content that I grabbed on the red carpet, and I'm glad we got it. It was a bit of a struggle before that.
But then the other thing was, for us, which is all about, being a team player, that the team from Seven had never been the Armchair Experts guys, Benny Graham, Duncan, and that
Cam Luke,
apologies, hadn't been on the carpet before, and they've been trying to expand their coverage of ball and how much they can do. They did a couple of shows from the international, and they're like, we only one piece. And what are you trying to get? We're trying to get Ben to catch up with his former QB, Kurt Warner, who they both played together in the Cardinals, and we're like, cool. But they didn't have it. We had a dedicated spot in the red carpet, and we're like, hey, got a spot. If you guys need to get that spot and get that grab, that's where it's we just want to step back and let you get it. The good thing is they did get it. They got Kurt's attention, and he's like, Ben's seen Benny in a while. So I think that's it's much better content for them and for their channels. Still raises the bar for the NFL in Australia, and for the most part, really well worked out really well for them.
Growing the fandom in the country. So
Yeah.
whether that's on the NFLAUNZ channels or the 7 Sport, ESPN, all the partners, it was great. And we're
that's
all in this together.
and that was the piece. I mean, I want to realize it's going to go long, but hey, it was a interesting day. Like, I think in the moment, I'm like, oh, I've never gone to NFL Honors again. But now a couple of weeks later, yeah, I'll go again. Because, in a different format, like you just don't, it's, it's a Gretzky quote, you miss 100% of the shots you don't take. If we don't go, we don't get that content. So, and we're just not in a position to be that content, I don't think. Because we just don't get the access. Before we get into the actual game day itself, I just wanted to, I guess, touch on a topic that's one that's very heated in Slack and in the content whips that we have, which is, I guess, the strategy around collabs, and especially our strategy overall from an NFLAUNZ point of view. We're pretty much, hey, how can we grow the game? How can we cut through the noise? How can we be in the pop culture conversation is what we want to do. One thing I will say is we are not precious in our grid. And just a note to everyone, no one looks at your grid. Only you look at your grid. And, again, Dylan's smiling like, yeah, you check your grid out. Oh, it's not quite the same. But again, you're the only one doing it. And so our strategy, especially around Super Bowl, is if you've got an engaged audience, if you've got a genuine interest and your footballers are showing an interest in the Super Bowl or your fans are showing interest, collab away. Like, it just opens up new audiences. You don't know where those conversations go. That might be the entry point in. And, the Super Bowl week and Super Bowl day is a collab frenzy, isn't it?
Yeah, it's completely crazy, just the amount of collabs that come through. As you said just then, we're not too precious, so we usually accept away as long as it's content that's relevant, that has ties to the NFL, that grows the game, that has reference to the important subject of the Super Bowl that's going on at the time. Yeah, we accept away.
And that's the thing. I mean, the advice for, and that's what we're saying. It's now, I think I have seen studies that saying the Super Bowl is bigger than the Melbourne Cup, which is a day that, in Victoria, you get a day off for. Like, people are taking the day off or they're stopping work for a couple of hours to watch. A lot of the AFL and NRL teams in preseason will have their morning session a little earlier and then move to the theaterette so they can watch the game. And, we did see a bunch of the AFL, NRL clubs come in and give us their tips, give us their take on the Kendrick Lamar halftime, a bunch of different ways. And for, my own advice for those teams doing it, like the game is going to kick off at 10 o'clock-ish, in Australia on a Monday, get in early. Get those collabs in early. Get those prediction collabs in early. The ones, shout out to North Melbourne who did a terrific job in getting those collabs in early, on Sunday, because it's like you're going to get more runway because on the day, like, I think that 7:30 to 10:30 time, when I'm talking Australian time, it was a bit hot and heavy in the accept. So I think there is, if you are the collab sender, especially in these major events, it also, I don't think every account's like us that's just going to accept. I think there is that building of the relationship that you want to do. But I think there's more for us to unpack and collabs overall. But just from a Super Bowl point of view, it was an accept away. And it really, how many did we have in total hosting on the day?
In total, we had about 54 unique Instagram posts, including collaborations, about 17 to 20 TikTok posts, including collaborations. Add in X tweets, updates. We're looking at over like 150 pieces of content just on the Super Bowl day.
Which is, which is amazing considering, we're doing it from inside the stadium.
That we are.
And so I think that's one of the shifts that it's more, you're the one that's on the tools on a weekly basis, and you're normally doing now, sitting in your chair with a nice big screen and multiple tabs open. I guess moving to that, mobile first scenario to get out. That was a bit of for game day.
It was.
You, but I think one of the things we want to shout out is the team at Slate for what they're able to, Slate as a tool to be able to grab the vision and then quickly, brand it up and get it out.
Yeah, Slate were crucial to keep the branding consistent in all the posts, help with the copy on the video, and to include all the Super Bowl fonts and colors in the brand kit that are so important. And also, like, the key for game day, working on a mobile for the other social media producers out there, is to leverage the key moments. When you're at your desk and you're on your normal game day, you want to try and do everything. That's human nature to do. But just leverage the key moments. What worked for us was the first tush push touchdown. That was a really key video that went out. And then the second half, Devontae Smith dagger touchdown was another key video. They were the two ones we put a bit more effort in producing on the day, and they went out bananas. So yeah, your key moments, know them, execute them, and they will work.
And then the other thing was back to that collab strategy and like having our partners. We knew that our partners would be producing content, collabing. So, ESPN were doing their little carousels that they do. Boom, accept. ESPN were doing their content pieces, accept. Tab were doing some extra pieces, we're accepting. So again, it was both ways that helped, fill out that feed. And then we also had the commitments of we've got to get the halftime clips out. We've got to get the brands getting out. So there was a bit of, trying to manage those. But yeah, it's a crazy day. And the thing is, people's attention is on the TV, but they're looking for the assets to be able to share, reshare, show their fandom. The key ones for us were, the planning of what eventually happened, which was the Eagles winning and Jordan Mailata being the first Australian to play and win in a Super Bowl. So one, we had those assets ready to go. We got them signed off by domestic, like even some slight tweaks to the assets even in the last couple of days to sort of be okay. Again, queuing up that would be collab back to domestic and to the Eagles and to the Eagles ANZ. I mean, it wasn't a last throw finish like in Las Vegas. So it was a little, because it was such a beatdown. But really, once we got into that fourth quarter, it was just like, okay, the champion post is going to go up, the Jordan post is going to go up, and then we just need to get that video of Jordan reacting on field. How are you feeling in that, in that moment of, hey, I've got the key posts that you just know are going to go bananas?
Yeah, very comfortable with the amount of work that we put into it beforehand. It's always the case in sports. You have two post preps, one for each team. You don't know which one you're going to post, but you have to be prepared. So we had the Eagles winning post, we had the Chiefs winning post, and we had the Jordan post. So once the game played out as it did and the Eagles were dominating from start to finish, we knew pretty quickly that we were going to be posting the Eagles post. So as soon as the final kneel down was taken, we put the Eagles celebration post up and then immediately went live with that Jordan post. And yeah, we knew beforehand it was going to do well, but we couldn't have believed how good it went. I'll take you through some of the numbers now.
Yeah.
Currently now, just for Instagram, has reached 2.3 million people, over 200,000 engagements, 2.5 million impressions. On Facebook, it went out to a global audience, had, again, 2 million people reached, around the same engagement. So it's just gone completely bananas, and it's quite easily the best post, I should say, that's ever been put out on the NFLAUNZ.
And I think the thing is, you really notice it being in the US as opposed to being here and back home in Australia, is Jordan Mailata is an absolute star. And, in America, not just, he's a great Australian star, he's a star, to be all pro and to, the respect, his star is going to get bigger. And so, yeah, those posts came out. And then the only other thing we were doing was refreshing Greenfly. Again, shout out to the LCC, the local content capture team that were out there capturing everything throughout the season, not just at the Super Bowl, but we're like, we just want the shot with Jordan celebrating, and we were both refreshing. We're in different parts of the stadium, have you got it yet? Have you got it yet? Got it. And, it was him embracing his wife, Nikki, to be able to, one, get that, turn it around, brand it up, put it out. And that's sort of, it was a bit of a drop the mic moment at least for that day to go, hey, we've done what we needed to do, take a deep breath and let everyone celebrate.
Yeah, it was such a beautiful moment, and it was so awesome to see, and that video was just perfect. And as well as ESPN, they were some of their broadcast clips on their Super Bowl coverage. They had Phil Murphy on the ground as well, capturing content from a different POV that worked well. So their collabs came through around that time to give the page a bit more color. And then Sonny from the NFL was on the field as well to give Jordan the Australian flag and the Samoan flag to represent his heritage. So we had that come through as well at the time, and it was just perfect. It couldn't have played out any better. Congratulations to Jordan and the Eagles on their win. It was an incredible season.
Exactly, and we really want to say thank you to the NFL scriptwriters that took in our notes that said we just wanted the Eagles to win and have Jordan be the first Australian to play and win as well. Yeah, I mean, we couldn't have scripted that week any better. But from having some wins throughout the week, and then we're also still in collating mode of content we have got. But to have the success of the Melbourne 2026 game announcement, and then to have the Super Bowl that we had. With Jordan being a big star in that team, it's amazing, and I guess now we've got a regate in my head as we start planning for next season, but also planning for Melbourne 2026 and having 100,000 Australians watch a game at the MCG.
Can't wait. That is going to be such an awesome day. The MCG is going to be rocking. That's going to be, again, a big moment for the NFLAUNZ channels. Stay tuned, everyone. Big things are coming.
Well, thank you very much, Dylan. Appreciate you coming on. It's much easier to recap a big week with someone that you did it with. I really appreciate you coming on the podcast.
Thanks for having me. It was great fun.